Hello and welcome to Stand Up Historian. In a previous episode, we explored the remarkable story of the prophet Daniel, how by interpreting the dream of Nebuchadnezzar II, he foretold the rise of the Persian Empire. That prophecy alone is astonishing, but tonight we return to the book of Daniel because the story does not end there. In fact, the deeper we go into Daniel's writings, the stranger and perhaps unsettling the picture becomes. More than 2,500 years ago, in the fading days of the Babylonian Empire, this Jewish prophet recorded a vision that has puzzled historians, theologians, and philosophers for centuries. A vision that suggests the struggle of empires may not be purely political. Daniel describes a moment when, after 3 weeks of prayer, an angel finally appears to him. And the angel gives a surprising explanation for the delay. He says, "The prince of the kingdom of Persia resisted me 21 days. But Michael, the archangel, one of the chief princes, came to help me." Daniel chapter 10, verse 13. Think about what this means. The angel is not speaking about the human king. He's describing a powerful being associated with an empire, a prince of Persia, a spiritual ruler. In other words, Daniel's vision suggests something extraordinary. And I will explain this dream in Hebrew later on in this episode. And also that behind the political empires of the world, behind kings and armies and revolutions, there maybe exists another struggle entirely unseen, a conflict between powers in the heavens. History, Daniel seems to suggest, is not only political, it is also cosmic. And if that is true, then the story of Persia may be far more mysterious than we ever imagined. The invisible war in heaven is, in fact, the Hebrew phrase in Daniel for Prince of Persia is Sar Malachut Paras. Sar means prince or ruler. Paras is Persia. The angel continues in Daniel 10:20. "Now I must return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come." This implies something astonishing. Empires themselves may have spiritual counterparts. The rise and fall of nations may reflect a deeper conflict beyond human sight. The New Testament echoes this idea centuries later. In Epistle to Ephesians 6:12, the Apostle Paul writes, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the ruler of darkness of this world." The Greek words used there, archai and exousia, mean spiritual authorities. In other words, the Bible suggests that behind human history, there maybe exist hierarchies of power, unseen power. Yet Persia itself holds a unique place in biblical history and biblical narrative, mainly positive. When Babylon fell, the empire that replaced it was ruled by Cyrus the Great. And Cyrus is praised in the book of Isaiah in a remarkable passage. And that passage is, "Thus the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have held." This is Isaiah 45:1. Cyrus liberated the Jewish people from Babylonian captivity. He allowed them to rebuild Jerusalem, actually the second temple. In Jewish memory, Persia was not a villain. It was a liberator. And yet, Daniel still speaks of a mysterious prince of Persia opposing heavenly forces. Why? When I say prince, it's a translation for Sar. Sar Malachut Paras. Sar means head of the kingdom of Persia. In fact, that's the translation. And Sar in Farsi also is head. To understand this, we must turn to Persia's own ancient worldview. This is pre-Islamic Iran. The dominant religion of ancient Iran was Zoroastrianism. Its cosmology describes the universe as a struggle between two forces of the God or truth and light, called Ahura Mazda, and the spiritual force of deception and destruction, or Angara Mainyu, also known as Ahriman. Ahura Mazda and Ahriman. Human history in this vision is the battlefield between truth and falsehood. The Persian word for truth is Asha. Falsehood was Drauj. Some scholars believe Jewish apocalyptic literature, including parts of Daniel, developed during the Persian era and may have observed elements of this cosmic worldview. If so, Daniel's vision may represent a fascinating moment where Jewish prophecy and Persian cosmology intersect. In fact, Persian worldview had an extremely powerful effect on the Jewish religion in years to come. Fast forward more than 1,000 years. Persia becomes Iran. And a new religious framework emerges, Shiite Islam. The ideology of the Islamic Republic, the brutal regime in Iran, is rooted in Shi'ism, which centers on the return of the hidden Imam, the Mahdi. According to tradition, the 12th Imam disappeared in around 9th century. He's believed to live in occultation and will return at the end of time. The Quran speaks about eventual triumph of the oppressed. It says, "We desire to favor those who were oppressed in the land and make them leaders and inheritors." And this is from Quran 28:5. Shiite traditions describe the world before the Mahdi's return as a time of chaos and injustice. Some interpretations suggest that great conflict will precede his appearance, or rather reappearance. Within the ideology of Islamic Republic, certain factions see themselves as preparing the ground for that moment. Members of Revolutionary Guards have sometimes referred to themselves as the soldiers of the Mahdi. For them, history itself moves towards an apocalyptic turning point. Now, let's take a look at Messianic expectations in Israel, which is the other side of the conflict, and it also carries ancient expectations. Judaism contains its own belief in a future Redeemer, the Messiah or Mashiach. In Jewish tradition, the Messiah will restore justice and peace and gather the exiled people of Israel. Most Israelis interpret current events politically rather than prophetically. But within some religious circles and communities, there are those who see wars involving Israel as part of a larger historical drama. Ancient biblical narratives still shape cultural imaginations. The Persian Empire itself appears in the story of Esther, where a plot to destroy the Jewish people ultimately collapsed. For some observers, history sometimes seems to echo ancient texts. And I have an episode about Esther and also Shushandocht. I refer you to those episodes of my podcast. When political conflicts are interpreted through religious prophecy, it changes. War becomes more than a strategy. It becomes destiny. It's what Islam calls jihad. Throughout history, we have seen this pattern. The Crusades, the religious wars of Europe, revolutionary movements convinced that history itself is on their side. When leaders believe they are acting within divine narrative, compromise becomes almost impossible. And you can see that in the Islamic Republic and how they brutalize their own people in the name of God. And because to compromise would mean defying prophecy itself, they never compromise. They never capitulate. Long before Islam or modern geopolitics, Persian mythology warned about tyrants possessed by destructive forces. In the Shahnameh, the tyrant Zahak becomes the servant of evil. Two serpents grow from his shoulders to feed them. He sacrifices the youth of the land. But eventually a hero named Freydun rises and the tyrant is defeated. The people reclaim their country, and I have told you this story also in another episode. For centuries, Persians told this story as a warning. No tyranny lasts forever. So for thousands of years, Persia has stood at the crossroads of civilizations. It has produced philosophers, poets, and empires. It has also become the center of powerful prophetic imaginations. Daniel saw spiritual powers struggling over Persia. Zoroastrian priests speak of a cosmic war between truth and falsehood. Shiite theology speaks of the return of the Mahdi. Jewish tradition awaits the coming of the Messiah. And today, once again, Persia stands in the center of a great conflict, which is also talked about in Book of Revelation in Christianity. Whether one believes in angels or not, the struggle for Iran still feels like something ancient. A confrontation between tyranny and liberation, Zahak and Feridun, between darkness and light. History has not finished its story. And the struggle of people in Iran has echoes of those ancient times. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and also some of the references I mentioned in Hebrew, which is mainly in the book of Daniel, most important, and also in Christianity, the Revelation talks about end time and the role of Persia in the coming of end time, and also the creation of chaos and the attempt to drown the world into chaos to expedite the appearance of the Savior is something that we see in Shiite Islam and the current leaders, rulers and revolutionaries in Islamic Republic. Thank you very much for watching and listening. And until the next time, God bless you all. Bye.